Okay, that's not really talking, but still!
So Disney knows they don't have to make live-action movies, right? Because they aren't very good at it. I'm not saying that Disney's always been bad at live-action movies. It's just been recently, most of their live-action movies have been pretty bad, especially the ones that they're trying to adapt from kids' books. I mean, one of their best ones is a remake of a movie they did where they did adapt a kid's book. Yeah, that was a remake. Didn't know that, did you? For some reason, when they adapt these kids' books, they're just not good. Like the one that I can think of that's just at least okay was Bridge to Terabithia, but the book was so much better. Then you get into things like Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. More like Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Movie. Am I right? Yeah, I'm right. And recently, like, the stuff on Disney Plus that we've been getting, things like Artemis Fowl or Stargirl or Timothy Failure, like all of these are adaptations from a book, but they're just not good movies. And I'm sorry to say that Flora and Ulysses, I didn't think was that good either. The premise isn't bad. In fact, maybe the book is better at it, but the idea of this superhero-obsessed little girl coming into contact with a super-powered squirrel, like, yeah, that's silly and goofy. You could see that working in the comic books even. Like, it's a great sort of send-up of the superhero genre. And yet they didn't really lean into that genre in this movie. I think my biggest issue was the lead kid. In fact, a lot of these movies suffer from bad leads. And that isn't to say that these kid actors are terrible, but they're just not very charismatic or interesting or, directed well. And, like, that's the thing is, we've seen plenty of kid movie actors be great, excellent even. But a lot of these Disney kid actors feel wooden, stiff. Like, the kid here, she kind of suffers from the same issues I had with Timothy Failure, where the character is like this cynical, know-it-all, bratty kid. She's not as bad as Timothy Failure was. Failure was a terrible character. At least in the movie. But here, like, her faux cynicism, realist take on things is just really bland and interesting. And she doesn't really give me anything to work with. Like, she's able to pull off the whole fangirl thing when it comes to superheroes, but she's not a very compelling or interesting actor when it comes to anything outside of being obsessed with superheroes. And even then, when her obsession is just kind of generic, it's not very unique or interesting in that regard. It's just kind of, oh, she's obsessed with superheroes, so she can name drop a couple things. But a lot of the name drops are for a fictional superhero that her dad made up that isn't even published. So it's like this weird obsession over a niche thing. It's almost like she's a hipster fangirl. Her sidekick, friend, boy, next door, whatever, he's also got this weird thing where he's got hysterical blindness. And that whole subplot just goes nowhere, and the kid is not very interesting. I think he's attempting to do a British accent, but if he's actually British and he sounds that bad, then hopefully that was just bad direction, kid. Oof. The adult cast isn't much better either. Like, you've got Allison Hannigan here, who is a super charming, lovable actress, been in all kinds of things going all the way back to Buffy and American Pie. She was charming and sweet and here, How I Met Your Mother. And here, where's the charm? Where is her sweetness? Where is the things that we love about Allison Hannigan? They don't feel here. It feels like she gave up. I mean, that's the whole thing with her character, is that she's in a slump. She's an author in a slump. But it feels like Allison Hannigan herself wasn't even trying. Like, she's being upstaged by a CGI squirrel. Not just in the movie, like, the squirrel writes this kind of poetry that really isn't very good, but it's treated like it's amazing. But Allison Hannigan herself, the actress, is being upstaged by a CGI squirrel in terms of believability and personality. Like, how does that happen? How did you make Allison Hannigan boring? And it's not just her either. I've seen this a lot. Jennifer Garner, especially when she does these kinds of kids movies, is just lifeless and flat and wooden. And I don't understand how you make these actresses, who are good actresses, this boring and uninteresting. How did you manage to suck out their personality? I will say, though, it was kind of cute that we got a mini DuckTales reunion, because in this movie you have Ben Schwartz as the dad, Danny Pootie as the sort of villain, Bobby Moynihan does show up at one point, and then Danny Pootie gets a little bit of a love interest in Kate McCucci. So there you've got Huey, Dewey, Louie, and Webby from the new DuckTales all in one movie. It was cute. I dug that. I will say that of the actors in this movie, Schwartz was actually the best. Like, Schwartz is able to switch between melodrama and comedic fairly easily. Like, he's able to do the whole melodrama, like, oh, kid, it's okay, our lives we have problems and blah, 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 you know, the family melodrama garbage. But then he's able to switch between that and, like, silly slapstick cartoony stuff. So, I mean, Schwartz is a very capable actor, and I kind of wish he got better material than this, because he's really capable. The other one who's obviously capable and a great actor is Danny Pootie. And maybe he's good. The director of this also did this Indian American sort of movie that was in both English and Hindi. It deals with Indian Americans, and I'm not familiar with it, but apparently Danny Pootie was the star, and I'm willing to at least check it out, because, I mean, Danny Pootie, he's so underutilized. Here he's playing the sort of antagonist, villain. He's this enthusiastic wildlife. What are they called? Animal control. Animal control officer. And he's so obsessed with catching the squirrel because he's just dead set on believing that it has rabies. And thinking, we need to bring this squirrel in because it's a danger to the community. And Pootie is playing up that sort of cartoonish villain. And I think he's very capable of being a charismatic lead and comedic lead. Like, we've seen that in his other stuff. But here he's actually being a comedic villain. And I think I think it proves that that he can play that kind of type well enough. And I think he should be given the opportunity to, once again, in a better written movie where he's got more stuff to do. And I also will say that the CGFX aren't that bad. They're not terrible. Like, they blend in with the background enough that you believe it's there. The main CGFX are Ulysses the squirrel and this recurring cat that continually attacks Danny Pootie. And both effects are fairly decent. Like, you can clearly tell they're CG effects. They're not as good as, say, Buck from the Call of the Wild movie from last year. That one was clearly CG, but it was rendered a lot better. Here, Ulysses is the best effect, but they're also, once again, these effects aren't terrible. They're good effects. They don't distract from the movie. I'll give them that. But for a movie that tried to sell itself as like this subversion of a lot of the superhero tropes and superhero genre, it doesn't really lean into that at all. Like, sure, the kid references a bunch of superhero stuff, and Disney pumps in a bunch of Marvel references because they own it, but even like the superheroes that she references that her dad made up, they'll show up as like imaginary friends and then do nothing. They're just there because kids have imaginations, I guess. But they don't affect anything. They don't really matter to the plot. They're just there, probably because they were more impactful in the book. But yeah, it's this bizarre. It's so bizarre that you have this opportunity to really play up superhero movies and the genre with Ulysses and discovering, like, you know, the kid discovering superheroics aren't, you know, like the comics. They're entirely different in the real world. There's some of that here, but it's not well defined. So much more of this movie is about the melodrama of her parents being separated and on the verge of divorce. And it's like, okay, that's fine enough, I guess, but her mom isn't that interesting of a character. Her dad's fine enough. He has this whole you know, he has some self-confidence issues and whatnot, and it's through this whole adventure that he rediscovers his love of superheroes, like, play that up more. Like, be more into that. But make that part of the story. But this whole thing felt like a missed opportunity. Like, they could have leaned harder into the superhero stuff, be a subversion of those tropes in the genre, play up the fact that it's about superheroes and, you know, lampshade some things and, you know, emphasize certain other ones, and it's like, you know, play around in the space. And they were just like, oh, hey, the squirrels got superpowers. We're not going to show a lot of that because that would cost money, and then we're just not going to do anything with it, really. Because why would we? Why would we try when we could not? I don't want to make it sound like I'm dogging this movie. There's a bunch of people that I follow who really liked it, and I don't want to make it seem like they were wrong for being into it. I personally was not. It's not terrible by the, you know, compared to things like Timothy Failure, Stargirl, Artemis Fowl, all that other crap that's on Disney Plus. This is not a bad movie. I just think given the source material, maybe that's better. And given the subject matter, they could play around more in the space and be more interesting, be more unique. But a lot of it is just the usual Disney family melodrama garbage. And maybe it's some producer at Disney who just keeps pumping out this specific genre and thinks, oh, this is amazing. This is what we should put our names on. And I'm like, try harder. You're Disney. You can afford to try harder.